Good morning. I'm so excited to see you all. Oh my goodness, so many faces of people that I really love. So many people wearing pink for me today. Thank you. Okay, so this isn't part of my sermon, but I was just thinking this would be kind of fun. Okay, so Angela told you that Baby Woods is on the way. So I thought it would be funny because he has ears now, or she, I don't know. So I thought it would be funny if you guys said hi to him or her, and then it would be on video, and then someday when they're older, they'll be so embarrassed. So I thought that would be fun. Hi, parents in the house, you guys, that's a good idea, right? Okay. So let's try. On three, everyone's going to say, hi, Baby Woods, okay? 1, 2, 3. Hi, Baby Woods. Thank you very much for helping me embarrass my future child. So I want to talk about some places that we don't want to go. And I was trying to think of a few places that I wouldn't want to go. So the first one on my list, if we can get my PowerPoint out. Great, thank you. The first place that I thought of was a desert. Here's the thing about a desert. I love the beach, but it would be like the beach, but you never get to the ocean, and it's really hot all the time, and you're thirsty. I would not want to be in a desert. Second place that I thought of was a rainforest. Okay, some of you might be thinking to yourself, whoa, I could learn all this sciencey stuff from the rainforest. But if I was in the rainforest, the only thing I would be thinking about would be, the clicker doesn't work quite as well as I was hoping. There we go. See, there still might be some of you thinking, wow, it would be really cool to study that bug. I'm thinking, get me away, because if I saw something like that, I would curl up in the fetal position and you'd probably never see me again. How many of you guys seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire? Okay, good, a good number of you. All right, so this is actually one of the first places I actually thought of that I would never want to be in. And if you guys remember this scene, yeah. For those of you who haven't watched it, let's just say that's mud. It's a pretty horrible scene, and I would never want to be there. And while I was a student at Gordon, there's another place I would never want to be, and that would be a math class. That would freak me out. Thank you for the claps. I was worried there'd be a lot of math people in the audience who'd be like, why is she saying math class? It's hard. But if you like math class, then think of English or philosophy or whatever. Well, anyway, let's look at something more pleasant. There we go. So the story for today, it's about a man. And this man is very hardworking. He's been at this job ever since he was a little kid. His job's very dangerous. He took care of sheep. So the thing about having a dangerous job is that you are hyper aware of the dangers. So some of the things that he would have learned when he was a child is he would have learned how to keep his sheep away from the wolves and how to defend them from wolves in case the wolves showed up. He would learn how to keep his sheep away from thieves and robbers and what to do if any thieves and robbers showed up. He would learn how to clean up his sheep's wounds because sometimes sheep would get into tangles or they would get aggressive with each other, so he'd have to clean up their wounds. He would have learned all of these things, but before he learned all of these things, his dad, who was a shepherd as well, would have taught him the places that he shouldn't go. So I can just imagine the dad talking to the young shepherd and telling him all the good pastures, but then pointing beyond the good pastures and pointing to a path on the other side between two mountains and saying to his son, don't take your sheep there. That path is very scary. It's dark. There are wild things. There's no good place for your sheep. Don't take your sheep there. And as a matter of fact, beyond that path, there's a forest, and it's even worse. If you take them to that forest, they're sure to get eaten by wild things. And any of them that you have left, the other place that you don't want to go, and remember, you can go to these villages nearby. This is fine, these little towns. But there's a city past that forest. And at that city, the people are thieves, The people are robbers. The people will take everything you have and they'll sell you for a slave. Do not go to these places. And it may be that when this shepherd was young, he was thinking to himself, well, I don't know. Do you think that's true? I don't know. But over time, as he started to realize that the wolves were a real problem and thieves were a real problem, he probably started to think to himself, you know what? My dad's probably right. Those places are probably pretty unsafe, and I should keep them away from there. So he grew up, and he took care of his sheep, and he was a good shepherd. He took them from safe place to safe place, and they recognized his voice. And before he knew it, his flock had grown to 100. And he didn't keep track of them by counting them. He kept track of them by name. He knew the name of each individual sheep. Annie and Kevin and Sandra and Donald and Maud and all the other sheep. So he knew the name of each of these sheep. And it could be that these sheep that were protected their whole lives and all they've ever known is the flock, it could be that, whenever they were afraid, they were protected. And whenever they started to wander off, the sheep would pull them back in. And one sheep, maybe, began to wonder, how come we never explore those mountains? Why do we stay in these safe little pastures when, I bet there's a forest on the other side of that, and I bet it's really interesting. And, these little villages, they're cute, but, I wonder if there's a big city out there that we could check out. So one day, Harold, you see Harold in there? He's right up there. One day, Harold, he sees some open road. He sees that his shepherd is distracted, and he says, this is my opportunity. It's peanut butter jelly time. I love this little sheep. By the time the shepherd noticed he was missing, Harold was halfway to the mountains. And now, the shepherd has to decide, is one sheep really that big of a deal? Now, some of you might work at Starbucks, or you might have noticed at Starbucks at the end of the night, anything that hasn't been sold by the end of the night, they just throw in the trash. And the reason they throw it in the trash is because it's business. They're used to losing some of it. Or maybe some of you are clumsy like me, and you've walked away from buying a slice of pizza at the mall and immediately dropped it on the floor. And they'll hand you another slice of pizza because they're prepared to lose a little bit of product. And it would be easy to say, there's naturally some losses in business, but for this shepherd, this wasn't just a sheep. This was Harold. It was his sheep. Okay, so I didn't come up with this brilliant story on my own. You know that this story is based on a parable that Jesus told, and I added a few embellishments to it. When Jesus told this parable, he does it in response to something that the Pharisees said. It's now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told a parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. In Jesus' time, in Jesus' context, who you hung out with, who you reached out to, who you were known for being around, it wasn't just a matter of your reputation like it is today. It was a matter of your morality. As a matter of fact, 3 chapters later, Jesus is describing a Pharisee. And the Pharisee, he's praying alone, but he's within sight of a tax collector at the temple. And the Pharisee is praying and he says, "God, I thank you that I am not like other people. Robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give 1/10 of all I get." That's how the Pharisees felt about sinners, about being associated with tax collectors and sinners. And Jesus, he isn't talking about shepherds when he isn't talking to shepherds when he tells the story. As a matter of fact, the Pharisees probably thought about shepherds very much in the same way that they thought about tax collectors and sinners. They probably didn't have any close friends who were shepherds. And you and I don't think very many of us have a lot of close friends who are shepherds either. But it's just kind of logic that if you have 99 sheep in the field, you don't leave to go find one of them. And I think it makes sense for the Pharisees too. They could say, like, you don't mar your reputation as a Jewish man by gathering with tax collectors and sinners. Or maybe for you and I got 99 problems on my mind, and that person struggling in my class or in my floor or in my friend group, that ain't one. Obviously, this is obvious to us, as it was to the Pharisees. Why take time and risk to go find one sheep when you have 99 in the field? Or to the Pharisees, they're thinking, why take time and risk to go after a sinner when you have a chance to be one of the religious elite? Or for you and me, why take time and risk to seek out a lost person if you're just trying to get through college yourself? But Jesus has an answer for this. At the end of the parable, after the shepherd finds the sheep, he doesn't call him Harold, but he does call him my lost sheep. What makes the sheep worth the risk and the time is that he belongs to the shepherd. And maybe we're Harold right now. Having wandered from God's protection, you find yourself alone and lost. Sometimes in dangerous places. That's pretty dangerous. I don't know how he got there, actually. I don't quite understand this picture. But if you find yourself lost and in a dangerous place, take heart, because every person here is his lost sheep. Jesus is no ordinary shepherd. He doesn't say, one lost, I still got 99. No, he is coming for you. And when he does, well, here's what Jesus says that he plans on doing. Verses 5-7. And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he tells his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me. I have found my lost sheep. I tell you, in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent." But moving on from that, past the moments when we ourselves needed to be found, there's more to this story. Because you and I, we're not sheep. God did not create sheep in his image, but he created you and I in his image to be like him. And even if it's impossible to reach in our flesh, the Holy Spirit gives us strength to live life like Jesus. And so that means that in this story, we're not just the lost sheep, but we are also meant to follow the example of the Good Shepherd. If we're following the example of the Good Shepherd, we will risk everything to go after the lost sheep. So let's go back to our story. Shepherd ran off in search of his friend Harold. We remember this little guy. Maybe the reason he thought it was okay to leave the 99 behind and go after Harold is maybe he thought Harold was just out over the hill, just a little bit away. He could easily just run, grab him, bring him back home by supper. Easy peasy. But he followed the trail. And the trail and those little hoof tracks, they led to a place that he was told to never go, a place he never wanted to go, the path between the mountains. Is it possible that this good shepherd who cared so much for his sheep, is it possible that he thought for a minute, maybe I shouldn't go? Maybe he considered just letting the sheep go. Maybe he worried about getting back in time for the other sheep to be okay. I think that although we have all experienced being lost sheep ourselves, I think we don't have to go too far to find people in our lives who are like lost sheep. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you can think of a few right now. Someone who's in need, someone who's lost, someone who maybe even pushes you away, but who desperately needs and wants your presence in their lives. Maybe it's a classmate you avoided, could be one of your roommates, could be a family member. I personally can say that I have a really special herald in my life. One of my top 5 favorite people in this world has wandered and has gone far into territory where I never thought I would have to go. And going after that person, I experienced what the shepherd experienced. That reckless abandon, like, I'm just going, I'm just running after her. I can just grab her, and before it's dark out, before I risk anything, I could bring her home. But it wasn't until I got beyond my comfort zone that I saw how far the tracks led to places that maybe I never thought I would go. And I have a confession to make. In that moment, when I reached that point when I realized I would have to leave my comfort zone, I sat. I spent some time just getting angry at her, so angry. I spent some time getting sad about the situation, really, really sad. But when Jesus talks about going after sheep, he makes it seem so easy. He says it matter-of-factly. He says, suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in open country and goes after the lost sheep until he finds it? Like it's obvious, like it's easy. But the people he told this to, they may not have been shepherds, they may not have known a lot of shepherds, but they would have been familiar with shepherding country. They would have walked through it before. They knew what sort of dangerous territory a lost sheep could wander into. They knew how impractical it was to go after a lost sheep. But if we are to imitate Christ, the Good Shepherd, we must do some hard things to go after these lost sheep. Things we don't want to do, things that are out of our way. And here's the thing, you and I, our lives are so full. I remember it was only a decade ago that I was here at Gordon, sitting where you're sitting, and my most repeated phrase at Gordon was, there is too little time and too much to do. That's what I was always thinking all the time. I worked at a church off campus. I was in gospel choir, which, by the way, was called Jabulani back then. Woo-woo, gospel choir. Yeah. All right. I was a leader for ISO. My desk, when I lived in Nyland and Chase and Tavilla, was covered in Post-it notes, because if I didn't write it down, I would forget it. As a matter of fact, one time, I went down to Lane and I interviewed for a job, and I got the job, and they handed me the shirt, and they handed me the little cap, and I went to my room, and I did my schedule, and I returned to Lane, and I returned the cap and the shirt, and I said, I don't have time for this. It was really awkward. We pack our lives so full. And I'm going to ask my friends, Katie and Peter, to come up and help me with a quick little thing. Yeah, round of applause for Katie and Peter. All right, Katie and Peter, average Gordon students, okay? Or more than average, above average, okay? All right. So they start out with one big thing, school. They're holding this one big, these are 8 pounds, thing, all right. So they've got school, but then Katie and Peter, they happen to be RAs. I mean, maybe in your case it's a sports team or something like that, but these two happen to be RAs. So here's RAing, there you go. Here's some RAing for you, all right. Katie, do you have a job?
I do.
All right, well, here you go. Peter?
No.
No, okay. Well, what else do you do? What do you like to do?
I'm a Scotsman.
You're a Scotsman. Well, guess what? There you go. All right. Let's see. What are some things? Okay, well, you need time to be able to do some art, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do that. And you need time to run. I know you like to run. So how about some running there? And you also like to do some different things with the girls on your floor, Like some activities. Okay, great. Great. And you also do activities with the guys on your floor, right? Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Every once in a while, you got to call home. You got to call to mom. Yeah? Okay. You got to call home too. You got a bigger family, so you got a bigger ball for family. Okay. So notice something about these two. Besides, they look fantastic right now. I love embarrassing my arrays. So notice something about them. In order to keep these balls from falling, which I told them they really need to be careful not to let them fall on the chapel stage, they've got to huddle over. They're not even able to look at each other because they're so busy trying to hold these balls, trying to keep it together. Okay, they've done this for long enough. Let's put them away. That's all right. Thanks, guys. We'll put this one on here. All right. All right. But isn't that just like us? We have all these things. We fill our lives with all these things that we want to do, that we have to do, that we need to be at. And it gets to the point where we can't even look to the side to see each other. In order to keep track and not lose one of these things we've taken on, we hunch over. And if we're following the example of the Good Shepherd, that's different. We risk everything to go after the lost sheep. Now, I do want to take a moment right here and make an important distinction. There is another side to this. Some of you, and I'm like this too sometimes, but some of us are really nurturing people, and we're very aware of the difficulties that our friends have, and we're tempted towards giving so much of ourselves that at the end of the day, there's nothing left of you. This person has sucked out all your time, all your energy, even your identity. And so I'm not suggesting that you develop a savior complex or develop unhealthy relationships where you're always being leaned on, where you're never poured into. We follow the example of the shepherd, but we can't be anyone's personal Jesus. If you find yourself in a relationship like that, I want to tell you right now, you need to find someone to talk to. Whether it's one of your RDs, you can come talk to me. You could talk to chapel office, any staff or faculty you're comfortable with. If you find yourself in a relationship like that, I really want to urge you to talk to someone about it. There's a healthy balance between putting yourself out there for people, between noticing the people around you and what they need, and becoming someone's sole source of support. There's a difference between seeing someone crying in the lounge and saying to yourself, well, I have homework and I really don't know this person that well, but I'm going to go anyway. Or having someone say to you, I need to talk to you. You're the only person I can talk to. We want to help this person get a lot of people supporting them, a network of support, so that they have various people they can go to when they're in crisis. But still, here's the challenge. If every person in this chapel imitated Christ in reaching out to those who are lost, no one would have to feel like they only have one person to talk to. If we're following the example of the Good Shepherd, we will risk everything to go after the lost sheep. So bring it back to the mouth of the mountain pass. Sitting there, realizing that it may mean giving a lot more time and risking a lot more of ourselves than we initially believed. And there you are, and it's time to choose. You know that sheep belongs to the great shepherd. What will you do? Will you count it as an inevitable loss, or will you keep going? And as you think about those sheep, you are dismissed.